Recently, the Interpol hosted a Caribbean conference, and in attendance were officers from a number of the countries in the area. And at a break, I began a discussion with the two officers from Barbados, which is the site of a major fulfillment center for internet operators based in Canada and elsewhere. And as we walked through what they had learned during the seminar and the session, we had a good, candid discussion. One of the officers said that Friday night there was a double homicide in Barbados, and we all knew what he would be working on when he got back to the office on Monday. Mm-hmm. So this competing priorities is a real hindrance for some of the work, because the harm that's done to the patients around the world it's undetected in most cases. In the past, I've had the occasion to speak to coroners in a case in Canada. And at the end of the day, there were 11 people who died because of ingesting a medicine that had no active ingredients. But the coroner could not link the fact that there was no therapeutic value in taking this medicine to the death of any of these individuals. They were also had multiple underlying conditions which could have caused the death. So often it's suggested to the private sector that we encourage prosecutors to look at these fact situations from a point of view of potential homicide cases directed against the organizers. And in fact, it's an extremely complicated thing to establish when you have real on-the-ground cases where people have died.
Tom, if I might, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say, I mean, you bring up a really good point, prioritization, and, you know, it really goes to the corporate cliche of tone at the top. In some ways, it's ironic that, you know, the partnership, and God bless them, and the pharmaceutical companies, you know, are really leading this, but I mean, there really should be some political leadership here. I don't see any. If you look at that bill and go on the internet, it's easy to identify people who are in favor of drug reimportation. There's very few people talking about this in the political leadership. And I think that's a real failure of perspective and a real failure of leadership.
If I might just add, I know we often point at developing nations and other traditionally corrupt nations who we've identified as sources for counterfeit medicines. But in fact, there was a case in Los Angeles about 3 years ago where a young, healthy woman had a pain in her leg. She went to the home of a curandero, a medical man. She received 2 injections of medicines widely known as counterfeit. She came home, she didn't feel well enough to go to Mass. She laid down, her sister went to Mass. When her sister came back, her sister was incoherent. So the healthy sister took her sister to the hospital where she died. Didn't smoke, didn't drink, didn't use drugs. She died within hours of getting injections of 2 widely known counterfeit medicines. They did the autopsy medical report, no known cause. So we can all discuss why. I think it's a lack of awareness. Now, when the police department went to the residence where the guy allegedly lived and determined that was him, and after some discussion, convinced him to agree and identify the woman he had injected, they hooked him up for dispensing medicines without a license, which he'd been arrested for and pled guilty to previously. On the way out the door, a gentleman pulled into the driveway with his 10-year-old daughter. They said, "What are you doing here?" He said, "I'm here to get my daughter some pain relief." And she was looking for the same injections that had just killed Esmeralda Mendez's sister. The cops turned him around. The problem with the lack of awareness, which we're trying to address through training, is the police officers didn't pick up the medicines at the scene. So because we didn't have a toxicology or a chemical analysis to compare to the toxicology, on the books today still remains her death as unexplained. When in fact there should be no doubt what she died of in America. Now, she was undocumented, as we use the term. She held 2 jobs, right? She did all the things that everybody in this room does. And yet, the coroner's report says no known cause. I struggle with that, right? In the city of Los Angeles, with incredibly talented physicians in medical care.
Thank you, Aaron, and thank you, panel. I think we're ready to move on to the next speaker and turn it back to Sam.